5 minutes, I told him softly, setting the folded card by his plate like a place setting. That's how long you have before everyone here figures out who actually runs your life. The dining room at Russo's was wall-to-wall glass and money, the kind of place where the air smells like truffle oil and old ego. He'd just finished a speech that wasn't really a toast so much as a performance, a polished monologue about fresh starts and parting ways amicably, in front of his friends and the handful of my invitees he'd approved. He was expecting tears. I watched his smile stall in midair when I didn't give him any. The card wasn't dramatic. No thick envelope, no wax seal. Just a simple white square with a neat time written in blue ink and a short sentence he'd have to read twice. He kept his voice warm for the room as he leaned toward me. "What is this, Maya?" "Instructions," I said. "For when the calls start." I wish I could tell you I'd planned to be this person all along, the one with steady hands and a backup plan for the backup plan. The truth is less cinematic. I learned steadiness out of necessity, the way you learn to keep a bathtub from overflowing in a house with screwy plumbing. Drip by drip, day after day, until one morning you realize you're timing everything you do around someone else's leaks. If you want to understand how I got to that table, you have to start with a Tuesday 2 months earlier, when I woke up at 5:12 a.m. to the sound of my husband rehearsing a sentence in the bathroom. "It's not you, it's the season I'm in." His reflection was practicing sympathy. He tried it 3 ways before settling on the one that made his jaw look thoughtful. That was Aaron, manager of narratives, collector of clever phrases the way some people collect vinyl. The man could pitch an empty room and make it clap. I made coffee, the dark roast he bragged about knowing, and set out his usual, oatmeal, chia, a line of blueberries exactly down the center because he once said it looked clean. Somewhere along the way, I'd become the person who remembered the details and disappeared inside them. He came down with his phone in hand, scrolled, kissed the top of my head like signing for a package, and said, "Investor breakfast. I'll send you the deck to print." He meant my deck. He always did. In public, I was his operations brain, which translated to doing the math quietly while he told the story loudly. We co-founded a tiny logistics software company out of our apartment 5 years ago, and by co-founded I mean, I built the routing engine, he built the brand around it. We really were a team, once. In our first year, we stayed up until 2 a.m. fixing bugs with pizza boxes as mousepads, laughing at how no one knew what we were doing. The laughter went first. Then my name started sliding off documents. By year 3, I was support. That Tuesday's investor breakfast happened in a private room at a hotel with chairs that swallowed people whole. Aaron wore a navy suit that made him look like a promise and opened with, "The problem isn't trucks, it's time." He pointed at the slide where my code turned chaos into straight lines, and the men at the table nodded like he'd invented gravity. A woman near the end, sharp hair, sharper eyes, asked a question about our anomaly handling. Aaron looked at me the way he always did when he needed a lifeline. I did the handoff in 3 sentences he then repeated with a joke, and everyone laughed in the right places. We closed the round that day. He kissed me in the elevator and said, "You're magic," which used to feel like a compliment. Lately it felt like being told I was excellent at making things appear and vanish on command. 2 days later, I met his assistant in the hallway carrying a gift bag with a gold ribbon and a box from a jewelry store I couldn't afford when I still believed in anniversaries. "Client, thank you," she said. She had the face you make when you know something you shouldn't say. I made the same face right back. It wasn't the gift bag that changed things. It was the locked folder on our shared drive I tripped over that night while cleaning old files. Transition. Inside, a bare-bones plan to restructure leadership for optics. A press release template with my name missing and a timeline that stopped right before my birthday, the date he'd been reminding everyone to save 4 weeks. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry. I poured almond milk over cereal like an adult eating dinner and stared at the tiny loops floating there. Resentment is heavy until it isn't. Then it goes cold and precise, like a ruler sliding into place. The next morning I told him I was going to my sister's to help with the twins. He said, "You're amazing," without looking up. I drove 10 minutes past my sister's exit to a co-working space where the Wi-Fi didn't blink and bought a day pass under my maiden name. Here's what I did, because saying I planned revenge sounds theatrical and this was mostly paperwork and sleep deprivation. I audited everything with my name on it, code repos, vendor contracts, little SaaS subscriptions no one remembers signing up for. Things we built fast in the early days left threads dangling. An IP clause here that defaulted to original authorship, a licensing agreement there that never got updated post-restructure. Every company has this lint. Most of it never matters. Unless someone starts sweeping. I documented, notarized, stamped. I scheduled a meeting with my old professor who taught me to make algorithms explainable to people who don't speak math. He remembered me. He also remembered Aaron as the one with the blazer. I left with 2 emails that would matter later and a reminder that my work had a paper trail longer than my marriage. I didn't tell anyone the full story, not my sister, not my best friend, not the barista who had already memorized my nervous order, decaf Americano, splash of oat, no lid. But I did start talking out loud again. To a lawyer named Elise whose handshake felt like concrete. To a bookkeeper who'd seen 3 startups ripped apart by soft takeovers and knew where founders hide their skeletons. Answer, in the calendar invites. To myself, in the car, practicing being someone who asks directly for what she's owed. The first small test came on a Thursday. Aaron forwarded me a draft of a thank you letter to our first warehouse client, standard stuff. I read the BCCs. He'd added our new investor and a PR guy, then a line that introduced me as project support. I replied all with 2 sentences. Please correct my title to co-founder and lead systems architect. Also, remove the adjective. He walked into the kitchen 20 minutes later looking like I'd insulted his ancestors. Why make things tense? He asked. Because they are, I said, and watched him consider whether I'd always been this inconvenient or if I'd just decided to stop compensating. The second test was bigger. A procurement portal we built for a regional chain had my name in the original author attribution, buried, but visible if you knew where to click. I knew where to click. I also knew their compliance officer by name after 2 years of late-night bug fixes. I called her from my car and asked a simple question. If an ownership dispute arises, what happens to portal access? She gave me the answer in policy language. I translated it to English. If things got messy, they'd pause everything until the mess got sorted out. Not out of loyalty, out of caution. That told me who to notify and when. By the time Aaron sent a calendar invite titled Maya's Surprise Dinner, I had a folder on my desktop labeled when. It wasn't that I wanted chaos. I wanted clarity. I wanted the kind of stillness that comes when everyone is finally forced to look at the same set of facts, no jokes attached. Which is how I ended up at Russo's, wearing a black dress I bought with my own money before we ever had a joint account, watching the performance. He talked about new chapters and gratitude for the journey, and people at the table made sympathetic faces in my direction like I was an unpaid intern graduating to nothing. I let him finish. Then I set the card down. 5 minutes is enough time for a lot to happen, if you know who to call first. He flipped the card open. His eyes skimmed the sentence once, then again. At 8:41, ask your investors why their logins fail and your client why our portal is read-only. He tried to smirk. It didn't make it all the way to his mouth. The room clinked, and somewhere down the table a laugh hiccuped into silence. Timer starts now, I said, and took a sip of water like the world wasn't shifting under the tablecloth. At 8:41, the room shifted from celebration to static. It started with a single buzz near the end of the table, the sharp-haired investor from the breakfast weeks ago, the one who actually listened. She glanced at her phone, then again, then sat taller. Across from her, a junior partner's smartwatch vibrated like a trapped bee. Another buzz. Then a chorus. Forks hovered above plates like props someone forgot to lower. Aaron's smile stayed glued on for 2 beats past natural. Looks like a group text, he said, light and charming. He tried to make it a joke. No one laughed. The investor, her name was Lena, I'd learned, held up her screen like a judge revealing the verdict. Why is our portal access revoked? She asked, voice even. My login's bouncing. Our backdoor read-only mirror is dead. Aaron looked at me reflexively. I let him sit in the quiet. Probably a vendor hiccup, he said, turning down the volume on his voice so it could pass for calm. We'll get ops on it. He nodded toward his assistant, who froze, her face doing a quick inventory of what ops meant in this moment and coming up empty. 3 seats down, the COO of the regional chain we built the procurement tool for was mid-sip when his phone lit up with 3 alerts. He set his glass down too hard. Red wine trembled against crystal. The order grid just locked, he said, each word clipped. Our stores are seeing read-only. Your hotline says suspended pending ownership verification. Suspended, Aaron. On a Thursday night. I'm sure it's policy, I said, not loud but clear enough to land. When there's an unresolved dispute about authorship, compliance pauses transactions until the documentation's reviewed. They're cautious. Not personal. Heads turned. The room's temperature dropped a few degrees. I could feel Aaron calculating narrative options, scanning for a joke to soften the edges. None presented themselves. He tapped his glass with a fork. The polite clink ricocheted and fell flat. Everyone, let's just. Lena stood. She wasn't theatrical. She was efficient. Who owns the routing engine? She asked, eyes on him, not me. Right now. Not in pitch deck language. Legally. Aaron opened his mouth, closed it. We, the company. Elise? I said, and across the room, the door to the private space opened as if it had been waiting for its cue. My attorney stepped in like she'd been invited for dessert. She didn't smile. She carried a slim folder and a phone with a call on hold. We're on with your compliance officer, she told the COO, extending the phone, speaker already engaged. A crisp voice spilled into the quiet. As discussed, portal access is paused pending receipt of signed IP assignments and verification the algorithm author approved commercial use. Will reinstate upon resolution. We've sent our letter to both parties. Both parties? Lena repeated. Who's the other party? Elisa's gaze skimmed the table and landed where it needed to. The listed author on the core algorithm and original commit history, she said, placing the folder by Aaron's plate but angling it toward me. Filed under her legal name. My name on the page hit the air like a dropped plate. It wasn't loud. It was definitive. A little dramatic for a birthday, Aaron said, aiming for charming and overshooting into brittle. Maya was, support. We've always credited. Have you? Lena said, not asking. She scrolled, then held her screen up to the table again. Because my firm's due diligence just pulled 3 patent abstracts under Maya S. Patel, predating your first seed check. Same math, same structure, same jargon. Either there are 2 Mayas building identical systems in the same city or she built it, someone finished from the end of the table. The COO's phone, still on speaker, chimed as an email arrived. I have the hold letter, he said, scanning. And a timestamp. Funny thing, it's signed and sent 10 minutes after a press release draft landed in my inbox moving Maya's name off the masthead. You try to cut an author out at 7:58, and at 8:09 we get told to freeze. How neat. A nervous laugh flared and died. Aaron's assistant, cheeks pink, whispered into her own phone, IT says admin credentials aren't valid. They say the only super admin is, it just says originator. She looked at me, then away. A waiter appeared with a tray of espresso cups, looked at the scene, and retreated. Aaron leaned over the table, voice low. What do you want? He asked me, the way someone asks for the fire extinguisher after admiring the flames. You win, okay? You made a point. This isn't a point, I said. It's provenance. The difference matters. He straightened. Fine. Provenance. Congratulations. He tried to laugh. It landed wrong. You think you can embarrass me into? The double doors burst open so hard one hit the wall. A man in an ill-fitting sport coat stumbled in, breathless, clutching his phone like a life preserver. It took me a second to place him, the warehouse ops lead who called Aaron brother in emails. Tonight he looked like he'd sprinted through traffic. Aaron, he blurted, loud, oblivious to the room's delicate optics, why did the maintenance window lock us out? We've got trucks sitting dead at docks. Dispatchers are calling me like I turned off the sun. Who has the key? Every face swung back to Aaron. He made eye contact with me and finally said my name like it belonged to a person, not a function. Maya. Lena sat back down, but it felt more like she'd taken a bench in a court. 2 questions, she said. 1. Does Maya control the code we just invested in? 2. Did you inform us she was being, what was the phrase, restructured for optics while we wired funds contingent on her being attached? No one reached for their glass. The clink had become dangerous. Aaron chose defiance. It always worked for him when rooms wanted to be charmed. We built this together, he said, sweeping a hand wide, an inclusive gesture that tried to erase specifics. We did. So stop pretending. Specifics matter, I said. Dates. Version history. Contracts you never countersigned because you assumed you didn't need to. He laughed, too sharp. So what, this is your big revenge? Lock a few screens and make a scene in a restaurant? You think this gets you equity? I think facts get me recognition, I said. Equity would be fair. Tonight is just air clearing. Someone near the middle snorted, then covered it with a cough. Elise slid a single-page summary toward Lena. Here's the short version, she said. We'll send the long one to council. Original author retains ownership. Commercial use requires license. That license was never executed by the company because your CEO insisted we're family here. We filed notice with counterparties so no one's blindsided during review. The warehouse lead still stood in the doorway, pale. So, the trucks? Your team's got a read-only mirror, I said, softer. He wasn't my enemy, he was a guy trying to get bread on shelves by dawn. Work from cached routes for tonight. We'll push a temporary unlock at midnight to clear backlog under your compliance officer's sign-off. It's not personal. He nodded once, grateful and baffled, then backed out the way he came. Aaron's face did something I'd never seen it do in public. He lost the mask. No polished sympathy, no game day grin. Just a man realizing the room he curated had turned into a witness list. So, Lena said, capping her pen, we're convening a board call at 9 a.m. Bring your paperwork. Bring your humility. She looked at me. Maya, you'll be on? I will. She checked her watch. Good. For what it's worth, I prefer authors to show up as authors, not ghosts. Aaron reached for my wrist. He'd never grabbed me in public. He didn't now. He stopped short and let his hand hover, realizing that even that would be a story he couldn't spin. This is not how we do things, he said quietly, eyes glassy, a plea for a different version of tonight. It's how we do facts, I said. Behind him, someone finally blew out the lone candle still guttering in my untouched dessert. A little curl of smoke rose and vanished into the restaurant's expensive air. At 11:37 p.m., the warehouse channel pinged my phone like hail on a tin roof. Photos of idle docks. Pallets sweating under sodium lights. Dispatchers with headsets crooked at panicked angles. I slipped on a hoodie over the dress, tied my hair back, and called the ops lead, the same guy who had crashed the dinner with his heart in his throat. Ravi, I said when he picked up. I'm not here to hurt your routes. I need you to repeat that to anyone who's listening near you right now. He didn't pretend to be tough. We've got 52 trucks staged, 30 more rolling, and a storm coming through Lansing at 4. If we miss windows, I have night crews sleeping in break rooms. Say you can help. I can unlock a narrow lane, I said. But I need 2 things. 1, your compliance officer on the call to approve the temporary token. 2, a statement for the record that you understand commercially we're in dispute and you're asking the author to authorize emergency access. It protects you and me. He didn't hesitate. Give me 3 minutes. I watched the city from my window while I waited, the way delivery vans slid through midnight like minnows. On the table, my lawyer's notes lay in ordered stacks, Elise's handwriting angled and balanced. The timer I'd set at the restaurant had run out hours ago, but everything still felt measured, the next keystroke, the next sentence. Ravi came back with the compliance officer on speaker, the metronome clack of a mechanical keyboard in the background. Ms. Patel, the officer said, voice dry, awake. We've reviewed the hold notice and the ownership documents your counsel circulated. We're requesting a limited use, read-only override to push tonight's staged orders only. No config changes. Token expires at 2 a.m. Authorization, 3 p. Emergency per policy. I'll log it. That's acceptable, I said. Ravi, text me the facility IDs and shipment batch numbers. I'll scope to those. He rattled them off like prayer. I typed, signed, pushed. On my end, it was 10 lines and a safeguard. On theirs, it was life support, screens flickered from gray to blue, statuses creeping from stalled to en route. A cheer went up in the background, thin, exhausted, but real. You can hear relief even through cheap speakerphone. Ms. Patel, the compliance officer said, after the noise settled. For what it's worth, thank you. I've been in this job 12 years. The only time I hear from authors is when something's broken or stolen. You showed up before both. Copy your legal on my thank you, I said. Paper matters in the morning. Ravi exhaled so hard I could see it even without seeing him. If I ever build anything, I'm naming a server after you. Name it after the person signing your checks, I said. And get some water. By 12:19 a.m., the map stabilized. By 1:03, Lansing was covered. I showered the restaurant out of my hair and lay down for 30 minutes, the kind of microsleep where your body powers down but your mind keeps one hand on the wheel. At 8:57 a.m., I clicked into the board call from my kitchen table, coffee at my left, Elise at my right, Lena's square already lit up. Aaron joined 9 seconds late. His camera came on and off twice, like he couldn't decide which face to wear. The others appeared in tiles, an older director with a beach house tan, a younger one with a perfect pocket square and the kind of eyes that prefer numbers to feelings, a lawyer with lips permanently pursed from redacting things. We skipped the small talk. Lena made sure of it. We'll keep it simple, she said. We have 3 questions to resolve: authorship, access, and accountability. Ms. Patel, you first. Elise shared her screen. Version history bloomed across it in color-coded commit lines. Commits that began long before the term sheet. We showed the first patent abstract. The second. The dated Slack messages where I asked for updated IP assignments and got thumbs up emojis instead of signatures. The DBA registration where he'd rolled my title from co-founder to operations without board vote, thinking no one would notice when the brand got neat. The beach house director rubbed his forehead. Why wasn't this caught in diligence? It was, Lena said. I flagged authorship risk in my notes. I was told, by management, that we're family here and the author was on board. There's a difference between a warm culture and a paper trail. We invested on conditions. Those conditions weren't met. Aaron tried to reframe. We built this together, he said, voice threaded with desperation. I pitched, I sold, I hired. Is there no credit? This is not a credit ceremony, the lawyer cut in. It's an exposure assessment. I kept my voice even. I'm not here to erase what Aaron does well. He is very good at making people listen. But last night he tried to make me disappear. That's not operations. That's theft with nice lighting. Pocket Square cleared his throat. So what do you want, Ms. Patel, precisely? Elise clicked to the one-page term sheet we'd drafted at 3 a.m., while waiting for tokens to expire. Option A, I said. Immediate execution of a non-exclusive license for the current engine, retroactive fees at standard rates since commercialization, plus a forward royalty at 3% of gross on products that ingest or output through my code. Public correction of authorship. Title restored to co-founder and CTO retroactive to the year you removed it, with governance rights and a board seat. Compensation parity with the CEO's current package plus back pay per the retroactive title. And we launch an internal review to establish who made what promises to investors about authorship. Option B, Elise said, we don't license. You unwind us out of your stack in 90 days. During that period, we'll authorize mirror access so your clients can transition without pain. You'll compensate counterparties for the disruption. We won't obstruct reasonable efforts. We'll pursue remedies elsewhere. The TAN director stared like he'd just been told the ocean wasn't real. 3% gross? You're welcome to negotiate the royalty basis, I said. But I won't negotiate the facts. Aaron leaned into his camera until his face became a landscape. Maya, don't do this. Think about what we've built. Think about our team. Ravi thought about his team at midnight, I said. So did I. Lena tapped her pen twice. I support option A, she said. It protects the asset, rights a wrong, and avoids litigation I don't have the appetite to explain to my LPs. The author stays attached, which is frankly the only reason I'm still on this call. Pocket Square nodded, slower. The lawyer floated a subject to final docs and no admission of wrongdoing like buoys he needed to place to feel useful. The beach house director muttered about precedent, which I translated in my head to women with receipts. Aaron tried one more angle. And if we decline both? Then you decline both, Elise said. And the next time you need a polite way to say we're family here, try saying, we have counsel. Silence tightened the space between our squares. Lena broke it. All in favor of option A for immediate execution? 4 hands. Then 5. Aaron's hand stayed off camera. It passes, Lena said. Ms. Patel, welcome back to your company. Aaron's camera finally landed on his face. For a second, he looked like the man I met in a sublet with a folding table for a desk, ambitious, charming, a little scared. Then he remembered which role he was supposed to play and sat very straight. When do we announce? He asked, voice polished enough to squeak. When you stop calling it an announcement, I said. It's a correction. We ended the call with tasks, not triumph, counsel to draft, PR to revise, operations to message. I sent Ravi a screenshot of the term sheet. He sent back a thumbs up, then tell your lawyer she scares me in a good way. I laughed, alone in my kitchen, and for the first time in months it wasn't bitter. It was oxygen. At 9:57 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know you think you've won, it read, but you've made enemies you don't see. No signature. No flourish. Just a threat dressed as warning, delivered by someone who still believed the world belonged to whoever said it most confidently. I took a photo of the term sheet, replied with it, and turned my phone face down. The first message was a pebble. The second was a landslide. At 10:11 a.m., 20 minutes after the board voted, my phone buzzed again, new account login from an unfamiliar device. I hadn't logged in anywhere. 2 minutes later, Elise called. We just received a preservation notice from a boutique firm representing an anonymous, concerned shareholder, she said, dry as dust. They allege you accessed investor data without authorization at 8:54 p.m. last night. Cute, considering you were busy authorizing emergency access for Ravi. I pulled up my audit logs. A login had pinged our investor portal using an old admin credential, the catch-all account we'd created in year 1 for demos, since retired. Except apparently not retired enough. The IP traced to a co-working hub 2 blocks from Aaron's apartment. Document it, Elise said. We'll respond with logs and the timeline. But expect noise. Noise arrived fast. A tech blog I'd never heard of published a post headlined, Co-founder hijacks startup, locks customers. 2 paragraphs in, they quoted an unnamed source describing me as unstable and obsessed with control, which is how the world often labels a woman who writes her own terms. The post included a redacted screenshot of commit history showing Aaron's name at the top of my module. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred, metadata dates were mismatched, and the font on the diff header wasn't even our tool. Sloppy forgery, but sloppiness can go viral. At 11:03, Lena forwarded a terse email from her LP liaison. We're getting outreach about a security incident. Should we be worried? I answered with measured lines. No data exfiltration, limited emergency access for a specific client, logs available for review. Then I attached the Lansing dispatch map rolling green overnight. Deliveries made, I wrote. Bread on shelves. 12 minutes later, HR pinged me. 2 developers had received emails from a credential verifier asking them to relink their SSH keys before a CTO transition. Fish. I killed the domain, posted a full company alert with the subject line "No one legitimate ever asks for your key," and reminded everyone how to verify my messages. If it doesn't sound like me, it isn't me. At 12:30, the payment processor flagged a sudden flurry of refund requests from 3 enterprise customers. Odd, given none had open tickets. I called the first CFO. We're just re-evaluating, he said, stiff. We heard your CTO, he stopped, corrected himself. We heard there's turmoil. Your team shipped last night, I said. We unlocked with your compliance officer's approval. Can you loop her in? A pause, then a sigh. We'll hold payment until our board meets. The second CFO was blunt. Aaron called. Said you're threatening to hold our data hostage. I kept my tone level. Ask him for the correspondence where I threatened anyone. I'll wait. He didn't have it, because it didn't exist. We agreed to a joint call with their legal. Meanwhile, I messaged Ravi to ask how the floor felt. He sent back a photo of a night crew sleeping on boxes. Then, we're with the person who showed up. I didn't realize I needed that sentence until it landed. At 1:08, a courier arrived with a confidential envelope addressed to me. Inside, a copy of my old lease agreement from 5 years ago with a sticky note, failure to pay? Familiar pattern. I laughed out loud. Weaponizing my 20-something ramen era? We were scraping bottom if this was the play. By mid-afternoon, the smear campaign moved upscale. A partner at a respectable PR firm left a voicemail. Off the record, we've been retained to correct the narrative. I won't take it, conflict. But you should know the plan. Seed concern about your judgment. Suggest you were sidelined for performance. Float a whisper about burnout. They'll use friendly reporters, social posts, maybe a podcast cameo. It'll feel ambient, not coordinated. He paused. I hate this part of my job. Thank you, I texted him. And keep your receipts. At 3:22, the false flag breach allegation escalated. Our cloud provider pinged about an automated takedown request claiming our repo hosted illicit code. The request was anonymous and overbroad, the sort of thing that gets laughed out of a real security queue but can still trigger a temporary lock if the wrong system doesn't know better. I escalated through a human I knew from a meetup years back. We see this, she wrote back. We're ignoring it. Also, whoever sent it used a template with your company name misspelled. Amateurs. Not everything was amateur. At 4:05, a calm man from a compliance consultancy called to schedule a surprise audit requested by one of our enterprise clients, an audit I had, ironically, asked for in our contract to keep us honest. We have an opening tomorrow morning, he said. Short notice, I know. We'll be ready, I said, and I meant it. Documentation had become my second religion. At 5:12, while I was building the audit packet, an email popped in from a law firm I knew by reputation, harder edges, polished shoes. They represented an Alex Thornton alleging harassment by me, calls, threats, late-night visits. My hands went cold until I read the dates. The alleged calls were during the investor breakfast and the board call. They'd attached screenshots of unknown numbers. Easy to spoof, easier to refute. Elise replied with one sentence, cease the frivolous filings, preserve your phone records. Then to me, they're trying to bury you under paper. We'll turn their paper into our evidence. At 6 o'clock sharp, Lena called. No preamble. 2 things. First, I spoke to the processors. We're holding payments for 72 hours, not canceling. Second, an old friend sent me a deck. It's Aaron's pitch from this morning to a new fund. He's trying to spin a rescue round. Slide 5 says, we've replaced our unstable CTO with a seasoned leader. Slide 6 uses your metrics. She exhaled once, controlled. I called the fund. No one likes being sold a lie with yesterday's numbers. He'll find doors closing where he expects them open. I went quiet. She did too. You okay? She asked finally. I'm busy, I said, which was the truest answer. At 8:03 p.m. another anonymous text, you don't see half of it. Careful walking alone. I screenshot it, forwarded to Elise, and filed a police report online, not because I expected a magic patrol car, but because paper matters. Then I texted my downstairs neighbor, who runs at dawn. Switch routes this week. She replied with a thumbs up and a flex. At 9:17, the tech blog posted a correction in size 10 font. At 9:18, a larger outlet DM'd me on social asking for comment on allegations. I sent them the audit packet, the midnight token approval, the license term sheet, and a note, print what you can stand behind. By 10, the worst had quieted. I stood at my window, the kitchen bright behind me, the city a constellation of other people's lives. Somewhere across town, Aaron was probably drafting a heartfelt post about his painful decision to part ways for the good of the company. He's good at words. I'm good at proofs. The last ping of the night was from a number I didn't recognize but a voice I did, the sharp-eyed investor from The Breakfast, Lena's friend. You don't know me, she said, but I've seen this before. They'll try to exhaust you into a mistake. Then I'll rest when I can, I said. Do. And one more thing, tomorrow, ask for the server access report from your cloud provider, not just the app logs. You'll want it. I wrote it down. I added it to the list. Then I set 2 alarms, one for the audit, one for water. At 8:02 a.m., the elevator doors opened onto a floor that smelled like burnt coffee and old confidence. The sign outside still read his slogan in brushed steel. I didn't touch it. I walked past it. Ravi was there before I was, hoodie up, hair damp from a sink shower, a bag of bakery muffins like an offering. For the troops, he said, half grin, half apology for existing. People gravitated to him the way code gravitates to the simplest path. HR had arranged a neutral welcome. It looked like a school assembly, folding chairs facing a borrowed projector, a table with name tags even though we all knew each other. I watched the room separate itself without being told, engineers to the left, sales and blazers to the right, operations along the back wall near the outlets. In the middle, a few people stood in the no-man's land of not wanting to be seen wanting anything. Aaron was not here. The board had asked him to take the day. A sentence that means everything and nothing. I took the middle. Good morning, I said, and the word felt risky, like I was betting the day would be won. I'm Maya. You know me, some of you better than you wanted to at 2 a.m. last night. I'm not going to give you a speech. I'm going to give you calendar invites. Nervous laughter shook off a little of the stiffness. The facts, I said. The board corrected my title to co-founder and CTO. We executed a license for the engine. If you're wondering whether you're going to have a job tomorrow, I'm wondering whether you'll have a better one next month. That's the energy I'm bringing. A hand shot up, sales jacket, expensive watch, name tag that said Gabe. What about the refunds? Are we going to be issuing credits to our enterprise accounts because of last night? Credits are for when something breaks, I said. We didn't break. We followed policy. We kept bread on shelves. What we will do is send a clear write-up to clients explaining the midnight unlock, signed by their compliance officer and me. If their boards want to posture, they can. We'll reply with paperwork. Gabe didn't like that answer because it wasn't something he could promise in a sentence over lunch. He nodded anyway. In the back, a woman from QA half raised her hand, then dropped it. I pointed gently. Say it. How do we trust what's real? She asked. All the posts yesterday, the emails, she searched for a word and settled on noise. It feels like quicksand. Trust logs, I said. Trust names on documents. Trust who shows up at midnight and who shows up on podcasts. I watched that land. Not everyone smiled, but a few shoulders lowered by a millimeter. Calendar invites, I repeated, and clicked the remote. The screen filled with a wall of small boxes. Today is one-on-ones with every team lead, then 20-minute office hours with anyone who wants to be heard, no hierarchy. Tomorrow is a code walk. We're going file by file through the engine with the people who wrote it. No gotchas. I'm not here to pass/fail. I'm here to give names back to what you built. A murmur, a different kind this time. And one more thing, I said. We're going to fix our paper. If you wrote a module, your name goes on it. If you led a project, your signature is on the spec. If you sold vapor, we'll find you a fan and give you a new job. A few snorts, even a grin from QA. I killed the projector. Okay. Meetings start at 8:30. Bring context, bring receipts, bring coffee. I paused. Leave fear. It's too heavy to carry upstairs. They scattered like chalk dust blown in a breeze. The room reorganized into smaller rooms, the way offices do when authority becomes porous. The first one-on-one was with Amy, a back-end engineer who'd been here since the folding table days. She sat rigid, eyes direct. "I almost quit last week," she said before I'd finished hello. "I didn't because I like the work and because my mother would call me every morning until I found a new job." "What kept you besides your mother?" I asked. She breathed out through her nose. "Ravi. And the feeling that the code was good, that it wanted to exist." "That's a beautiful sentence," I said, and she rolled her eyes like compliments were traps. "You're not going to do the thing where we reorg to move faster and then everyone who says no is replaced by a consultant with a templated deck, right?" "I'm going to do the thing where we write down what we actually do," I said. "And then we stop applauding people for being loud." She looked at me for a beat, then nodded once. "Cool. Also, your caching layer makes me want to cry in a good way." "Tell me what makes you want to cry in a bad way," I said, and we got to work. At 9:12, HR pinged, "Small issue, Julia is here." Aaron's assistant. The one who'd smirked across a candle and called me a housewife from the 50s in a restaurant bathroom without knowing my phone could hear. I told HR to send her in. She sat, crossed one leg, smoothed an invisible wrinkle. "I want to be clear," she began, tone already defensive. "I never targeted you. I did what I was told." "You forwarded confidential drafts to press," I said. "You scheduled my demotion as a surprise. You ran interference when engineers asked for contracts. That's not neutral." She blinked, and something snappish cracked into something human. "He told me I was getting promoted," she said quietly. "New title. More pay. Said we were leveling up." I believed him because he believed himself when he said it. I let that sit. It wasn't forgiveness, it was a pause. "I can't keep you in your current role," I said. "But I'm not going to walk you out for someone else's story. HR will line up options, severance with a reference to your organizational skills, or a 30-day contractor trial in vendor ops, no access to PR, no access to legal. You'll have to re-earn trust." She swallowed, pride, fear, both. "Vendor ops," she said finally. "I don't want to be someone's megaphone anymore." "Good," I said. "Then don't." By mid-morning, a theme emerged. People were exhausted from performing certainty, performing hustle, performing loyalty. The ones who stayed had one thing in common: they cared about the thing we were making more than the idea of who got credit for making it. Not everyone stayed. Just before lunch, 2 sales directors requested a joint meeting. They closed the door and started the way people start when they want to sound noble. "We feel," one said, "that the company's direction is unclear." "It's clear," I said. "We build software that makes supply chains less stupid. We stop sending decks that promise features we don't have. We stop implying that charm is a roadmap." They exchanged a look, then presented their terms like a negotiation. "We'd like written assurance that no public statement will suggest prior misrepresentation. Our clients are sensitive." "What you're asking for is a lie," I said. "I don't issue those." "So you're forcing us to resign," the other said, already moving toward righteous. "I'm giving you the dignity of choosing," I said. "If you stay, you'll sell what we have. If you go, HR will give you 3 months and a clean reference on performance, not ethics." I stood, so the meeting would end before the dust cloud of wounded ego settled in my lungs. They left like men exiting the wrong room on a game show. At 1:40, I held office hours at a long table near the windows. People came with small things that were actually big: a junior dev who wanted to put her name on the module she refactored in the dark, yes, and teach a lunch and learn on it; a dispatcher from Detroit on Zoom whose team had never once met anyone who wrote their software. "You're meeting me now. What's the dumbest thing we make you do?" A designer who had taped screenshots of 2 versions of the same dashboard to the wall and asked which path we were taking, the one that reduces clicks for people who don't have time to click. At 3:05, the ops Slack lit up. Aaron had posted in #general from a burner account with a fake name, a long paragraph about betrayal and legal overreach. He forgot the burner still used his favorite ellipses style, space ellipsis space, which is like a fingerprint for people who think they're clever. I didn't delete it. I replied beneath it with, "Leadership note, our legal team advises we not discuss active disputes here. If you have concerns, my office hours continue until 5. If you need history, see the pinned documents. If you want to talk about the work, sit with Ravi." The thread died on its own. People went back to their tabs. Ellipses are less hypnotic when you have a truck window closing in 30 minutes. At 4:30, I was bone tired, the kind that food can't solve. I walked the floor once, slow, like a person checking that a house still stands after wind. It did. In the corner, I heard someone say, "She talks like she writes code." They didn't mean it as an insult. I decided to take it as a benediction. I was packing up when Lena called. Audit team's early, she said. They're downstairs. Good, I said, surprising myself. We're ready. You're really doing this, she said, not a question. So are they, I said, watching Ravi teach 2 junior engineers how to trace a request like a breadcrumb trail. Finally, the audit team came in like weather, windbreakers, calm faces, clipboards that never blinked. No grandstanding, no theatrical gotcha. Just questions, timestamps, and a rhythm that said they'd done this more times than we'd ridden elevators. We set them up in the conference room overlooking the loading docks 3 floors down. Trucks slid in and out on their own clock, indifferent to narratives. I handed over the packet Elise and I had compiled, license terms, midnight token approvals, commit history, change logs with authorship stamped like a return address. They asked for the server access report Lena told me to fetch. I slid across a fresh printout from our cloud provider with a neat little bow of metadata. The lead auditor, compact, precise, the kind of person who probably ties their shoes the same way every morning, studied the report, then tapped one line with a capped pen. This IP, he said. Access attempt at 8:54 p.m. using deprecated admin. The referrer string's odd. He angled the page toward me. The string contained a typo only one person we knew would make, Transiton. Aaron's favorite missing eye. Elise exhaled through her nose like she'd been holding a small animal still. We'll let counsel handle it, she murmured. But that's a thread. Out on the floor, the office kept moving. QA was pushing a hotfix. A dispatcher in Detroit was FaceTiming a junior dev to show why a button belonged 6 pixels to the left. Design was taping up a board titled Paper We Forgot to File and filling it with sticky notes like a garden. No one was watching the audit. They were watching the work. At noon, we switched gears. The team had a release queued, small on paper, big in lives. We were turning on a new routing heuristic we'd been testing in the shadows of chaos. A thing that shaved 6 minutes off last-mile deliveries in dense neighborhoods without asking drivers to do gymnastics on side streets. 6 minutes per run isn't a headline. 6 minutes per run across 400 runs a day is a shift change that starts earlier. A night with an extra story read to a kid, a driver who makes it home before the worst of the storm. Feature flag at your discretion, Amy said, hovering over my shoulder like a guardian hawk. Blue/green is good. Worst case, we roll back in 30 seconds. Roll forward, I said, and clicked. Nothing exploded. No alarms. No dopamine spike in Slack. Just a log line turning from pending to live, then a cascade of tiny numbers rearranging themselves into something kinder. Ravi stepped into my office 15 minutes later. Dispatch is pinging, he said, grin small but uncontainable. The new lanes feel human. They're saying it out loud. We kept the release quiet. It wasn't secrecy, it was choosing to measure by outcomes instead of applause. At 1:30, the auditors surfaced, calmer than they'd arrived. We'll finalize by end of week, the lead said. Preliminarily, your controls worked, your emergency access complied with policy, and the complaints filed don't match your logs. He paused. The report will reflect that. I didn't smile. Relief wears out fast when you've been rationing it. Thank you, I said. We'll keep everything preserved. At 2:10, the PR firm that declined the smear campaign sent me a one-line email. 2 outlets passed on the unstable angle. One asked for comment with your entire audit packet attached. Whoever's running this is losing the room. 10 minutes later, the tech blog that started the mess appended a second correction, this time at the top, bigger font. Update. Emergency access was granted with client compliance approval. Earlier characterization was incomplete. No apology. They don't do apologies. But it was quiet proof. At 3 o'clock, Lena's face popped up on my screen. The LPs are satisfied, she said. We'll send a note to investors, authorship resolved, controls validated, business as usual. She rolled her eyes at business as usual. You know what I mean. I did. Business as usual wasn't usual anymore. It was better. At 4:07, HR pinged. The 2 sales directors had accepted severance. Julia had moved to vendor ops, sent a list of 3 vendors with flaky SLAs and a plan to fix them, and asked if she could attend the next compliance call as a listener. Keep your camera off and your notes on, I replied. We were not building a redemption arc for show. We were building a different muscle. At 5:12, a driver from the Lansing lane left a voicemail I've replayed more than the interview requests I turned down. I don't know what you did, he said, voice frayed by long days, but my 3rd run got me home before my kids' chorus. I'm not crying, it's cold. A chuckle. A sniff. Whatever, thanks. I forwarded it to the #release channel. No one reacted with confetti emojis. They added the water emoji we'd adopted for hydrate and continue. The smear didn't collapse with a bang. It just stopped finding oxygen. Anonymous texts kept trying new costumes, legal threats, sad nostalgia, performative concern, but they sounded like someone blowing across an empty bottle. The server report linked the fake breach to a co-working hub frequented by two of Aaron's loudest friends. Counsel took it from there. One investor who'd flirted with leaving doubled down after the audit call. Another who had been conspicuously silent sent a terse note, proceed. As evening folded the office into softer colors, I walked the rows of desks one more time. The brushed steel slogan outside still read his words. Inside, the walls were filling with other words, names under modules, dates on specs, the phrase "what's true," scrawled in dry erase above a chart of metrics we'd promised no one but ourselves. I stopped at the windows. The docks below glowed in sodium, orderly as a heartbeat. Ravi leaned on the sill beside me, forearms smudged with whiteboard and a streak of chocolate from a muffin he'd forgotten he'd eaten. Not how I pictured a win, he said. How did you picture it? I asked. Confetti cannons. Victory speeches. A banner that says, "Suck it, chaos." I smiled. We got a voicemail from a chorus. He nodded, considering. Better, he conceded. He hesitated, then added, "You know he's not done, right? Guys like that don't vanish. They just look for a new room." I know, I said. That's why we keep the lights on here. He pushed off the sill, went back to teach someone where to put a semicolon and why. The office hummed, not loud, just steady. The kind of sound a place makes when people believe the work matters and that the names attached to it are the right ones. My phone buzzed one last time. A final anonymous message. You'll never be able to prove what really happened. I typed, I don't need to prove it. I need to keep shipping. I didn't hit send. I deleted it. Then I opened the feature dashboard and watched 6 minutes become 5 in a neighborhood I know by heart. Some victories don't raise their voice. They sign their name, flip a small switch, and arrive exactly on time.